Hey, today I'm super excited to host this session as the topic, I'm working on it like daily. So I love to dive into it today with the expert speakers in front of us. And yeah, to show you or to share a bit of a context is that we're going to dive into the topic rewiring L&D for impact. And mainly about the topic how to shift from training delivery to performance architecture. And as we all know, AI is accelerating the pace of change. So skill gaps, they are getting wider and wider. And currently, organizations are asking more from their L&D teams than ever. And what we actually see, and what I see a lot when I talk with my clients, that L&D is standing on a crossroad. And L&D really needs to make a pivot. So the pivot from traditional role to the strategic role and become a performance architect. And actually the question is shifting. So it's not only anymore about what do people need to learn, it's really about what do people need to do differently in order to get better in their work. So this is what we're going to explore today. And of course, I'm not going to do that all alone and by myself. We have two great expert speakers amongst us. And before I'll introduce you to them, I will share a bit about myself, as I've been talking already for a couple of minutes, and you might don't have a clue who I am. So I am Juliëtte, and I work at Lepaya as an L&D consultant. And for the ones who don't know Lepaya, we are so actually what our mission is that we upskill workforces to create real business impact. We are that trusted partner for L&D professionals to really make that shift. And how we do it is we design blended training programs. And we make sure that everything what you learn in the classroom, that you're really going to apply it in your work. And at Lepaya, it's essential that we measure and steer on impact. Okay, enough about myself and enough about Lepaya, of course. Can I ask you, Lavinia, to introduce you?
Yes, hello everyone. Good morning. I'm Lavinia. I am the co-founder and learning architect at Offbeat, which is a space dedicated for to L&D professionals. So what we basically do is that we gather L&Ds live and online to discuss current challenges, projects, shared knowledge, but also think a bit about what the future of L&D might look like so we can stay ahead and we can shape it ourselves before somebody else shapes it for us. So what I basically do is that I talk to L&Ds and about L&D all day.
Thank you, Lavinia. And Alex, can you introduce yourself too?
Yes, I'm super excited to be here today with everyone. I had no clue we're going to have cameras on. That's interesting. At the moment, I am director of workforce consulting at SThree, but my background has been for years within learning and development, talent, sales capability roles. And that's my day job. And by night, I say I run a AI learning community for non-technical professionals, Project Breakthrough, with one of our peers, and we basically gather people together from HR to vibe code and build products and basically just help ourselves keep up with the pace of change within AI.
Yeah.
And yeah, outside of that, just naturally curious and lifelong learner. That sounds cheesy on this webinar, but I swear it's true.
No,
All
it doesn't
right.
sound cheesy at all. I really like it. I mean, personally, I have the same. It's lifelong learning. So
Yeah.
thank you for bringing this up. Okay. Yes. So let me dive into the agenda of today. Actually, this panel discussion, because as we're going to have a nice conversation about L&D, it's basically built up in two parts. So the first part we dive into, okay, because I was talking about that shift L&D needs to make. So what is that shift? So what is the new role of L&D? We will dive into that. And the second part will mainly about, okay, how to make it practical. So how to make it super concrete. How can we make that shift and what's needed for that? And the guest speakers will share some inspiring methodology and also give you some tools to really put things into practice. And then we're going to wrap it up and you will receive some advice. And also, of course, there is a moment of a Q&A to ask your questions. Okay, before we dive into the question of the new role for L&D, we have a question to you, to the audience. So everyone, we would like to ask you, and we're asking you this because we're curious on where you're currently standing. So what is your current situation? And the question is, what role does L&D play in your organization now? So I would like to launch the poll and I would like to ask you to answer this question. So what role does L&D play in your organization now? And let me pause for a bit so you will have time to answer this question. So, and I see indeed, yeah. Okay. So I'm going to end the poll now, as I have the feeling that everyone gave his answer. I see some movement still. So I will end the poll and share the results with you. So what we see indeed is that the shift is already sort of going on, because we see that starting to shift toward performance consulting, it's getting there. And still some of you are answering the first one so that you're really busy with delivering training programs in response to requests. And a group of you, they are not sure, they're still figuring it out. So let's dive into the first question. And I'm gonna stop the poll. Okay, we shared amongst the group about a new role, the new role for L&D. So when knowledge with AI is everywhere, what is this new role? May I ask you, Alex, what do you see as the new role for L&D?
Yeah, when knowledge is everywhere. I found this question really interesting because I feel that knowledge has been everywhere for a while. Like you could have gone on YouTube or Google leadership training, yet Despacito seems to be the second most popular video in 2025. I double checked as well, right after Baby Shark, right? So it means that the people don't naturally root themselves towards learning and so on. So I think the role of L&D will still be to curate the right knowledge for the organization. If we think about the role of L&D in the organization, for me, it's really to drive the business strategy to skill building, depending on where the organization wants to go. And it's in my opinion, especially nowadays when in my mind, learning agility is the mega skill of the coming years, where we have to really keep up with the pace of change. I feel L&D plays a really key role of cutting through the noise and curating the right knowledge to support the right skill building, depending on where your organization wants to go. And I think that's the key role that the L&D will be playing. And the reason why it's challenging is because the landscape now with AI is changing dramatically nonstop as well. And the organizations are responding and learning on the go. We are all learning at the moment as well, which I find interesting and exciting because all the rules are rewritten. So I feel that the role of L&D is twofold, if I were to kind of summarize. One is to establish the fundamentals and the baseline knowledge we all need to have. It's really easy to fall into the AI slop now, but the core knowledge that will help you judge the output of AI is really important. I don't know how many of you have tried to make something with AI you didn't really understand. Right? It was really hard to know, is this good or is it bad, right? The same goes for your organization in L&D. It's really to understand what is this baseline knowledge we need everyone to have. And then next to that is the exciting piece with AI, depending on your organization, which is making sure you build in these experimentation spaces. And if you look at some of you that maybe delivered leadership training, how many hours have you spent trying to get people to build a vision, right? Integrating maybe AI tools into your training, where you can kind of really accelerate and embed it into the learning as well, or helping teams experiment and augment their workflows as well. And my last piece would be here, in order for all of this to happen, as always, L&D needs to put their own mask first, which means we need to be at the forefront of the change and to understand how to work with these tools, what are the tools that are coming up, to be able to curate learning in the right way for the organization. And I think that's the most challenging part, I would say, given the world we live in and the pace of change.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and Lavinia, because I see you already encouraging Aleks with his answer, so I'm curious also on your vision. Would you like to share that?
I can say first what Aleks said,
Yeah.
and then honestly, yeah, to Alex's point, I think access to knowledge hasn't been an issue for a while now, and it's not the only thing that is required for skill acquisition or behavior change. I just feel like it's been the easiest way for us to offer value in L&D. But moving forward, I think there are two things that I have in mind. First of all, I think L&D will be in charge of bringing people together for various reasons: to define problems, to share knowledge, to improve processes, to create strategies. So basically using what we already have, which is our facilitation skills and our experience design skills, to bring people together to help them connect and collaborate better. So I think that the sessions we will run moving forward will be less and less about content and more about facilitation.
Yeah.
So that's on one end. On the other end, because Aleks mentioned quite a lot AI, and I completely agree with what he said, I have a different stance in the sense that one of the biggest challenges we've had in L&D is transferring learning into work, right? And that has been the problem because training usually sits so far away from where people work, hence they forget whatever they learned, and so on and so forth, right? And in 2018, I hope I'm not mistaken, Josh Burson coined this term, learning in the flow of work.
Yeah.
And it sounded really, really good. But I think we didn't have the technology to make it practical. It was just too hard. The knowledge in the company was way too spreaded. It was just very, very hard. I've talked to so many L&D teams and nobody had figured it out until AI came around. So I think that from now on, we will see more and more L&Ds building tools, copilots, chatbots, checklists, whatever they are, that sit very close to where people work. But this also means that we will almost operate like product managers. So making sure that we're solving the right problems, making sure that we are maintaining those tools. Aleks, you mentioned vibe coding, and I think vibe coding comes with a lot of responsibility of, again, maintaining those tools, updating them whenever it's needed, and also making sure they are grounded in the right scientific theories, right? Because we need to remember that AI is large language models. They are LLMs, right? So they don't have very, very deep knowledge about how people learn. And we need to make sure, as L&Ds and as instructional designers, that we bring this lens to whatever we build for learning in the flow of work as well.
Yes, and Aleks, because I saw you nodding, so
Yeah.
what would be what are your
So
thoughts on
I
this?
love that Lavinia mentioned flow of work. I think we've like broken our backs in L&D trying to make that happen. And I do feel that with the AI tools that are available, we can talk about AI tools and democracy across organizations, depending on the sector you work in, whether you have them available or not, and how can you go all the way through all the tools, or you are highly regulated industry such as banking. But I feel that I'm glad that Lavinia brought the flow of work, because I feel the ability to do that now is there, and it's way easier for us to do that as well. I would also add something that Lavinia mentioned around the vibe coding and the product management. I feel that the experimentation places and this moment where we can bring people together to build something, I feel we are still learning. And on one more thing, I like the product manager's hat as well. But I have to say, I've obviously started on this journey immediately, and I was really bought in. And the amount of products I build that are useless is almost infinite, right? So it's really also around us understanding, put that product manager hat on and understand what is a good product and how to build it and so on, and how do you bring it into the organization. And given that the name of the change is learning in experimentation, I think we need those safe experimentation spaces for our people, but also for ourselves, to understand what is it that we can do with this technology that's also a good product.
Yeah, and also what I heard you saying in the first part of your answer was that L&D is really about now to drive business strategy by skill building. So that's what you really set central. So what I hear in both of your stories, that it's so important that L&D is connected with the business strategy, and that they know where the business needs to go to, and that they are there, like they play a huge role in that transition. That's what, at least if I look at my own conversation I have with my clients, I really see that that's what the role they need to take. And
Yeah.
that strategic part, that they are that strategic partner within the company to make sure that the whole business will transform. It's huge what I'm saying now, though, but I think it's an important position to that they need to take. Hey, as we have been talking about the new role, I think it's also super interesting to see or to hear from you. Okay, what does it all mean? What is it practical? So to make it super practical. Before we're going to do that, we're going to dive into we're gonna launch another poll. So if we would like the audience to answer this question: what is the biggest barrier to rewiring L&D in your organization? So what is currently the biggest barrier for you? So if you are aware of, okay, we need to make a shift and we need to make this pivot, what is keeping you, what's holding you back? So what is the main barrier? I see everyone is answering the question, so thanks a lot. So mainly what I see now is that getting stakeholder buy-in for a different approach. So getting stakeholder buy-in, that's currently the main barrier what we see. And sort of looks like that it's hard for the audience that really to get the stakeholders around them to bring them along on their vision and on the way how they want to approach it. Yeah, I'm gonna show you the results. So what we see is that, and I already shared it, that mainly you answered that getting stakeholder buy-in for a different approach. It's a tough one for everyone. And then the other thing is also not knowing where to start. Yeah, and a lack of time and resources. So I believe you haven't seen the result. I saw them. So here are the results, but I went over it, and I'm gonna stop share now. And I would like to ask Lavinia and Aleks to dive into the following question. So when we are talking about the shift, so how can they make it super practical? So and how does it look like day to day? Lavinia, can I ask you to elaborate on this question and share your vision on it?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about product management, right? And from my experience, what product managers do very, very well is that they frame the problem they're trying to solve extremely, extremely well, right? So question is, how can we translate that into L&D. And I think this is really important because most L&Ds got into this field because they want to help others, right? But oftentimes I feel like that works against us because the behavior we show up with is saying yes to most of the requests that we get, regardless of whether they make sense or not, right? So having this product manager lens is really, really important. So what I've seen L&Ds do is create very strong intake processes, right? So this is probably the most concrete advice I will give in these minutes. So have a really, really strong intake process that can start with a form, right? And you can ask what triggered the request, what's the problem you're trying to solve, what behaviors would need to change for this problem to be solved, what's currently getting in the way of these behaviors. Is it knowledge? Is it the incentives, processes, tools, and so on and so forth? And how will we know it worked, right? What would we measure and in what timeline? So you can create this form. It can have like 4 or 5 questions. The point is to have stakeholders really think about these questions upfront. And one of the things that we've been discussing quite a lot in our community is, what if they don't fill in the form? Well, if they don't fill in the form, I would personally question 2 things. First of all, how important and urgent their problem is if they can't take 10 minutes to think through some questions. And second of all, their commitment being with us in the process of design and delivery. Right. So, okay, you can have this form, and afterwards, as a process, we have like a one-on-one conversation where you can ask any clarifying questions or push stakeholders to also think deeper about different things they said in the form. And by the end of the process, both the L&D and the stakeholder should be almost 100% aligned on the problem that you're trying to solve and the metrics that we need to influence.
Yeah.
So yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No. So is it correct that you're really you're mentioning like to do a really strong and profound needs analysis and to really find out, okay, what is the root cause of it? Is that what you're mentioning?
Mm-hmm. Yes. I don't like the term needs analysis, because, and I'll tell you why, because I feel like there is an assumption there that training is the solution, right? If you call it training needs analysis, it almost starts with the assumption that we're going to do training afterwards. I think I usually call it like an intake process or a research process, right? To understand what the problem is. I think the focus at this point, it has nothing to do with solutions. You'll figure out solutions later on. I think you're trying to understand what the problem is that you're trying to solve, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. So really dive into what the problem is and see it as a research process. So that's what.
Yeah, exactly.
And I remember, or not, I don't remember, but you have also been sharing a framework with us. And actually frameworks. So this one you showed with us, the Grace Miller's framework, and also you were talking about courage while we were preparing us for the conversation. Can you elaborate a bit on what you have shared with us? And like
yeah. Very happy to. I'll be very quick. I won't walk through the frameworks there, but I think it's really important to have this experimental mindset. For a very long time, we've been working in a very waterfall way, taking like weeks, sometimes months. And honestly, I'm at fault at that. I was doing that quite a lot at the beginning of my L&D career, like months to design something. And when you take that long, you kind of have the assumption that whatever you're designing is the right solution when you actually don't know, right? You don't know that the feedback training will help people share feedback more. You don't know that the onboarding process you spend a lot of time on will actually, improve onboarding. You don't know all of that. So I think that we need to take smaller bets quicker and always adjust based on the data we receive, right? And this framework is a beautiful way of putting it into practice. And if we go to the next one, my strong belief is that any of these frameworks that we're discussing right now, they won't matter if we don't have the courage to actually make these changes, because it does take a lot of courage to ask another question to a stakeholder that's very, very busy, to say, hey, training might not be the solution. So I think without courage, everything we're discussing here would just remain a nice slide. And I think we need to discuss courage more in L&D and in general in other disciplines as well.
Yeah, totally agree on that. And we were referring to this also while we kicked off the webinar, that we all saw, and Aleks also, that it starts with you, and I look at the audience currently, that you are the ones who need to make this mind shift, and you are the ones who need to embrace the courage and to have the courage to really start the conversation with your stakeholders, and that it starts from within, for you.
Yeah.
Aleks, I'm curious also on your vision, and also you've shared some nice frameworks and tools to give to the audience.
Yeah, so I love that Lavinia opened with the intake and so on. I do want to just respond briefly, and it will touch on what we've discussed. I feel that for my approach to stakeholders, especially more senior, was not I wouldn't be able to get them to do the form. And I know that we want them to have the buy-in and so on, because, and I've been really thinking about why that's the case. And Brené Brown, when she talks about emotions, she describes it when people can't name their emotions. That's like going to a doctor with a broken leg and saying everywhere hurts. So how do you diagnose the right thing? And it's because you don't have the vocabulary to describe your emotions or to say where it hurts. When we go to our people in the organization, the same thing happens, I feel. We are asking them, what do you need from learning? But they don't always have the vocabulary to describe the skills, the competencies, or what is it that they really need in the organization. So I feel our role is also to facilitate the process in the organization and educate them where we can help. I worked in very kind of commercial organizations where it's really high pace and so on. People are not always admin friendly and so on, even though I do expect that people will kind of meet me halfway and so on. But I do feel that us also understanding how to come to the audience and educate them on where is it that we can support and in what way, I think it's one of the key pieces. And if you show one of the slides, I think for me, if I were to kind of say, where do we start? I have learned this back at my time at AIHR. Kudos if anyone's there, and for Dieter for sharing this approach with me back when we were there. And then I took it to my learning role when I was working here, which is to basically think, who are my customers? And who are these people that I'm going to be working with? And if I go, imagine that this is now a logistics organization as well. I would go to the stakeholders and say, who are our priority groups and why? The way that I've sneaked myself into strategy conversations were to facilitate strategy planning sessions. It's a hack for me, and it works really well because I would hear all the conversations right when they happen. So I could understand, okay, the organization is trying to move left. We need more skills, or we need stronger onboarding, or we're missing skills in marketing or logistics and so on. So I would kind of hear and narrow around the conversation, and I can go to my team and then say, we need these programs and we need this change. So, and once I have that, I can then say, okay, out of these personas that we have, let's say these are the groups of people we have, we are this year focusing only on 2. Because usually at L&D, we are trying to justify our existence at times and say this is why we exist, but it's really important that we say these are the key focus areas. If we move to the next slide, this is how this can look like. Yeah. And what you do really is you agree with the organization, what are these key competencies we want to develop this target group for? And then you can really tailor your interventions accordingly. I do want to highlight something here, which is around AI specifically. I feel that we will not be able to have one size fits all. If we go, sorry, to the previous slide, just to illustrate this example, if you look at sales or supply chain people in production, all of them have a different functional skill set or affinity towards more work that's processes versus relationships. So when they are using AI, they're going to be using it in a different way, and they will have had a different baseline where they're starting from. So when it comes to your AI learning strategy or adoption, I feel we should start from functional skill set and really working with people in their groups and on their processes to understand how they can embed AI into their role versus generic training.
Yeah.
And if we then navigate to the slide, which is McKinsey's model or this Galbraith star model, I am a big believer that we should look at organization as a system, because if I had a dime every time I did a leadership training and then the leaders said afterwards, oh, well, actually, we're not going to do goal setting in that way. We have our own way. Or do we really need to do coaching, right? But then are we aligned around what we're implementing? If we are training something that the organization is not supporting, or in this, as you see on the model, it's not rewarding, we don't have processes in place for it, there's no structure, it's not part of the strategy, it's just not going to work. And we can keep ourselves busy, but I feel we can also challenge the business back saying, if we are to do this, these are the expectations we have from you. And I feel that this is where we need to have, it's called organizational development, where you are kind of looking at organization as a whole system to understand how the interventions we're doing. And I love that Lavinia mentioned training is not always a solution. Mostly the training is not the solution. And I think this is a way to think about your strategy and what you're doing in a holistic way.
Yeah. So basically what I hear is saying, indeed, to summarize it, is that what you both need to do is you really need to understand the persona. So really understand, okay, what is it, what they face and what their challenges. So the people who work in the companies, and you combine it with also the business strategy, and then you see this model that's L&D needs to be connected with the system and the organizational system, and they need to understand how it all works. That's what you're saying, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. And I would just add one more piece. So if you saw the persona, and I said I put all the executives into like leader persona, for example, we can then have a session with our leadership team and say, you can take any competency framework and say, what are the key 3 or 4 competencies we want all of them upskilled on? Because sometimes we work with big frameworks and everyone is tested on everything and so on, but building a skill, even 2 skills, is not an easy job, right? So saying these are 4 or 5 priorities for development for people, it gives L&D focus, but it also helps us keep the business accountable and also assess that later and get data. So I'm saying pick a target persona. What is the target competencies we have? Look at the interventions and then look at conditions for success for those interventions in terms of the broader organization, and what are the things we need to move similar to the STAR model across the organization to make that land.
Yeah. And Lavinia, I'm curious on your current thoughts also, and if you can share them.
Oh my God, so many good
Yeah.
good thoughts here. Sorry, I would just piggyback on some of the things that Aleks said. When it comes to AI adoption, right? One of the things that I noticed, actually two, let's go with two. First of all, when L&D is just handed over, do some training on AI so that people learn how to use AI better, but there's no other initiative, there's no other support, buy-in from stakeholders. In our community, we just noticed that doesn't work. People aren't just less engaged in the training overall, but they're also, of course, not using AI as much. But to Alex's point, when you look at AI adoption through this systemic lens, so thinking about the incentives that people need, the processes that need to be adapted, talking about how the roles will change, offering people clarity, offering them space to experiment, and having leaders role model using AI and sharing how they're doing so, yeah, it just works way better. Again, at least from what we've seen from our community. So that's one thought that I have. And then I think the same model, and it's good that you're sticking with it here on the slide. I think it applies to everything else, because even when it comes to leadership development, we are investing so much in leadership development. And we did a study a couple of months back, and what we saw is that those who replied were very unhappy with the impact that they were having with leadership development, although the budget was there. And it's mainly because, again, going back to training is not the solution for every problem. I think we do need to think systemically about leadership development as well. And I usually call it leadership enablement, because again, it has to do with the processes that leaders need to go through, the incentives that they have or don't have to act in certain ways, the tools they have, and so on and so forth. So yeah, so many good points Aleks made. I forgot some of them, but these two kind of stuck with me.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I like it a lot. And I think, to be honest, we can talk about this for hours. And the only thing is that we need to go to the wrap up. And because I got super excited also about your answers. And I think also for the audience, there are a lot of practical tools you gave. And that we're in it all together. Let's say that also. That's mainly also with your community, Lavinia, you have with Offbeat. I mean, that's really the space to share this amongst each other and to encourage each other and to motivate each other to make it all work and to really make this shift. We need to go to like the last part of not the last part will be the Q&A, but the final, the part before that, the key takeaways. So actually, I would like to ask you, Aleks and Lavinia, if you could give one piece of advice, what would that be? Aleks, you're unmuting, so you can.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I feel that because we started with rewiring, I would say that at the moment CEOs or organizations are seeing, I would quote Galloway here, AI as corporate Ozempic for efficiency and gains and so on. And if we are rewiring, the question should be, why are we rewiring and what are we trying to achieve before we get into any kind of work?
Yeah.
And that would be my key takeaway, is to really understand what is it that the organization is trying to do in this particular time.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Aleks. And Lavinia, what would be your piece of
advice? I was thinking of something else initially, but then the thing that I have in mind is just join a community, join an L&D community that's more modern, that talks about all of these things, where case studies are shared, where people are sharing like practical their ways of doing things, their challenges, their struggles, and yeah, just discussing all of these things recurrently, and that are broadening a bit your horizon. I would say looking across disciplines. Aleks also mentioned organizational development, which I think is so important. So org development, experience design, behavioral science, AI, all of these things are, first of all, so interesting and so useful to us as a community. And yeah, these modern L&D communities are actually discussing these things.
Yeah. Thanks.
Can I just
Yeah.
Just add one thing to Lavinia, because I think it's one of the key things for me. I have to say, one of the ways I personally managed this change and pace of change was the communities and meeting people in different events. And I have to say, in this moment where I can work for a week with my AIs, but actually the real impact and the connection I made through meeting people more, and I'm going out, even out of working hours, to meet with peers from the industry was instrumental for me to gain perspective, ideas, and to kind of understand where everyone is. So fully aligned with Lavinia on this one.
And like what we currently do also is having this webinar, so that we have a conversation around it and that people are inspired about it. So indeed, so to go to the community and also to listen to this kind of webinars and and get inspired and make it super tangible for yourself. Hey, let's move towards the Q&A. I'm super curious if there's any questions from the audience. And let me scroll down because there has been a lot of chatting going on, I observe. Let's ask the audience if you have any questions. So, and if you have any questions, you can share them in chat. Let me look at chat. Waiting for some questions. Yes. Hey, Lucas, thanks for asking your question. I ask myself this: are L&D and leadership separable at all? I highly doubt it. So, what is all of your opinions? So, you mean if L&D is separate from leadership? What is your opinion, Alex or Lavinia, would you like to elaborate that? Yeah, I have the same. So what, Lucas, what's your real question? Do you mean what?
Is it if the roles of L&D and leadership overlap?
That's how it sounds to me as well. Yeah.
Okay,
Yes,
okay, okay.
exactly.
Yes, I do think they overlap quite a lot, and I think there's a big challenge in L&D taking away some of the responsibilities that leadership actually, like managers actually have. And I would say the difference is L&D thinks at scale and thinks about aligning the whole organization, whereas, of course, leaders are in charge of their own teams, departments, and so on, but they need to work very, very well together in sync for things to actually happen and happen well.
Yeah, I think that too. Looking at time, we have one more question. So Gregor is asking, how do you define performance consulting in your organization?
I
Alex.
could pick that one up. Well, for me, it's really working with people in the flow of work, and that would mean that, for example, if you have either sales team or observing leadership, for example, you kind of follow them with the client visits. Then after that, you do the debriefing, the feedback, and so on. So you really do coaching on the job, and making sure that you are helping people perform as they're performing the work. So for me, I worked actually in two roles that were close to sales capability. And that was that was actually most exciting I've had, because you can really make impact because you're kind of following your cohort as they're progressing through work. And this is where you design programs usually as they're starting. And then as they're moving further in their career, you are usually more focused on the functional skill set. But then for leaders, that would then be the leadership skills. But I've mostly seen that and focus on performance consulting within more commercial roles so far. And I would say that kind of breeds the most impact as well when it comes to L&D interventions, from my experience. Yeah.
Thank you. And I see I see another question. I do need to wrap it all up, unfortunately. For Zoriana, if you like, you can stay a bit longer in the call and then we can answer your question. And so really to be mindful of time, as it's already time right now, I would like to wrap it all up. First of all, I would like to say a big thank you to Alex and Lavinia for that you joined this webinar, for sharing your insights, for sharing your vision, and also you inspired the audience. I really liked the conversation to have with you. Also, we had yesterday and today, so it inspires me a lot. And for all the other ones, if you want to dive deeper into it, we have the L&D strategy guide, so you can download it via the QR code. And then you have a lot of knowledge with you to support you in your shift. So I really would like the audience, Alex, Lavinia, and thank you. And for the ones who want to stay a bit longer, it's absolutely fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I'm actually happy to stay to pick up this last question as well.
Yeah. So when moving from training delivery to performance architecture, the biggest challenge we see is tracking changed behavior. What would you suggest for tracking it? And are there any tools you recommend?
So the Let me see, tracking change behavior. I love this question because it's my nightmare. And there's a few things that I've done so far. One has been that I always track lock-in pre and post assessments, and I think assessments in this particular case really help a lot. There's one thing that I've also tried, which was in my previous L&D role, we launched within SThree actually AR role plays that would have people practice conversations with clients, and then they would be assessed against the criteria that you would add to your AI agent, and that kind of helped understand if there's a behavior change and so on. The challenge is the tech, because tech moves really fast, so it was working really well, and then we had some glitches. But for me, I was following always Kirkpatrick's model, if you prefer using it, which was to make sure they understand if people are happy at the training, to measure the knowledge, and then the behavior. And AI I've used for the behavior piece. And another way to do that was basically to do the coaching and shadowing on the job, which took a lot of resources. But during my time in Coca-Cola, for example, I did that a lot with the team as well. So those are a few things to explore, and I would explore definitely AI in that space. I do have to say people were a bit wary of being assessed by an LLM, but I guess we are also maybe a bit more used to it right now. So yeah.
Thank you, Alex. Thanks for answering this question. Let me have a final check as if there are any more questions. And I have the feeling it's not. So then, for the last time, I really would like to thank the audience, and we're gonna wrap it all up.
Thank you.
All right, that's a
everyone.
wrap, everybody.
Have a good
Thank you so
day.
much.
Yeah.
Bye.